everyone, and welcome to Insight Spark. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today. If you haven't already, definitely poke around the channel to check out this and our other explainers. Plus, we have some incredibly engaging audio podcasts where we really deep dive into these fascinating topics. Today, we are unpacking some mind-blowing source material from the cutting edge of longevity science, telomerase activation. We're basically looking at how scientists are learning to rebuild the literal protective caps of life itself. We're going to cover the core principles of this methodology, the brilliant minds behind the research, the massive medical problems this could solve, and exactly how you can put this science into practice in your everyday life. We'll be ramping up from the basic biology to some truly wild breakthroughs, so stick with me. But real quick, before we dive into the biohacking and the science, a standard reminder. Everything in this explainer is for educational purposes. Please always consult your physician or a qualified healthcare provider before trying out any of the health methods, supplements, or lifestyle tweaks we're about to discuss. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the DNA shoelace caps, then move on to reversing the cellular clock. After that, we'll look at the dark side, which is cancer, then dive into supplements, peptides, and biohacking. And we will wrap it all up with lifestyle, your natural control. All right, let's jump right into part one, the DNA shoelace caps, the biological clock inside ourselves. So every single time our cells divide, whether it's to heal a cut, renew our skin, or boost our immune system, there is this amazing, but honestly kind of tragic process that happens. The tiny molecular machines that copy our DNA, well, they actually can't quite reach the very end of the chromosome strand. So, to protect all your vital genetic code, your DNA has these protective ends called telomeres. Think of them exactly like those little plastic caps at the ends of your shoelaces, the aglets. They literally stop the shoelace, or in this case your DNA, from fraying and unraveling. But here is the catch. With every single cell division, those protective caps get just a little bit shorter. And as you'll see here, this perfectly illustrates what happens when the cap wears down. In biology, we call this the Hayflick limit. When that telomere cap gets critically short, the cell just cannot safely divide anymore. And at that point, it faces two options. It either triggers its own death, which is a process called apoptosis, or, and this is much worse, it turns into a senescent cell. We usually just call these zombie cells. They don't divide, but they don't die either. Instead, they just sit there in your tissues, actively pumping out inflammatory toxins that basically poison the healthy cells around them. And this buildup of zombie cells, it's literally one of the fundamental drivers of why we age. Which brings us to part two, reversing the cellular clock, the incredible promise of telomerase. Now, I know this sounds like pure science fiction, but this is proven science. In fact, the discovery of telomerase actually won the Nobel Prize back in 2009. Telomerase is an enzyme that literally acts like a molecular builder to rebuild those frayed shoelace caps, basically resetting the cellular clock. In these absolutely groundbreaking experiments over at Harvard, Dr. Ronald DePinho and his team proved something miraculous. They took aged mice with shortened telomeres and genetically switched on their telomerase. And the result? It wasn't just slowing down the aging process, it literally reversed it. The mice got their brain function back, their organs regenerated, and they even grew back their youthful coats of fur. Absolutely wild, right? So you're probably asking the obvious question here. If we know exactly how this aging mechanism works, and we have the actual enzyme that rebuilds these protective caps, why aren't we all just taking a telomerase pill with breakfast? I mean, why isn't this the standard of care everywhere? Well, that leads us right into part three, the dark side, cancer, the ultimate biological dilemma. Here's the massive catch. Healthy adult cells in the human body almost never express telomerase. They keep that switch strictly turned off. But you know what absolutely loves telomerase? Cancer cells. A tumor will essentially hijack this enzyme and use it as an immortal engine, giving it the fuel it needs to divide infinitely and destructively. And this is exactly why top oncologists have been warning us that just systemically flooding the human body with telomerase to look a few years younger could be like playing a game of Russian roulette. Sure, you might rejuvenate your skin, but you could also inadvertently wake up a dormant microscopic tumor. However, it's not all doom and gloom. Scientists are working on an amazing compromise. If we can develop targeted, highly localized, and temporary therapies, think of it like a quick repair job for exhausted tissues rather than trying to make the cells permanently immortal, the applications are just staggering. We are talking about massively extending our health span. The goal isn't just to drag out life to 150, but to make sure that when you're 80, your biological age feels like you're 40. Plus, using short-term telomerase in specific stem cells could completely revolutionize how we heal severe burns, chronic ulcers, and ischemic injuries without triggering tumors. Let's pivot to part 4 and see how the biohacking industry is attempting to bridge this gap today. Supplements, peptides, and biohacking. It is really interesting to look at what's already floating around out there on the market. In the nutraceutical space, you've got plant-based extracts like TA65, which comes from the astragalus root, or compounds from Centella asiatica. And hey, some independent studies do suggest that low doses of these might slow down telomere loss in older adults. But remember, these are just supplements, not registered drugs. Then you have the peptide world, heavily researched in Eastern Europe, things like epitolon. Lab and animal studies show it can induce telomerase activity and restore tissue function. But, and this is a massive but, it entirely lacks the huge Phase 3 FDA-level clinical trials that are required to actually prove it's safe for humans over the long haul. And that highlights the sheer wall of regulatory and scientific barriers preventing this from being in your doctor's office right now. For starters, mice have totally different telomere biology than we do. Theirs are way longer, so blindly translating that data is super risky. Secondly, we just don't have that precise molecular on-off switch yet. We need to turn telomerase on for 5 minutes in one specific tissue and then instantly shut it down to prevent cancer. And the tech just isn't there yet. Also, surprisingly, the FDA doesn't even classify aging as a disease. You literally cannot register a drug for old age. Oh, and a quick aside about those commercial telomere blood tests you might see online. Geneticists warn they are highly imprecise, mostly because your telomere length varies wildly depending on the tissue. The cells in your blood are totally different from the cells in your skin. But hey, don't let those medical barriers get you down. Let's look at part 5, lifestyle, your natural control. This is where you actually have a ton of power. Science has conclusively proven that the speed at which your telomeres shorten is heavily tied to how you live. Nobel laureate Elizabeth Blackburn did these iconic studies proving this exact point. She studied women who were under immense chronic stress, specifically mothers acting as caregivers for chronically ill children, and her findings were mind-blowing. She proved that massive chronic stress and that resulting flood of cortisol directly and physically degrades our DNA's protective caps. The telomerase activity in these stressed individuals plummeted, and their telomeres were way shorter than they should have been for their age. Basically, your stress levels are quite literally talking to your DNA. So how do we apply this today? It's all about crushing systemic inflammation and oxidative stress. Step 1. You absolutely have to actively manage and reduce chronic stress to keep that cortisol in check. Step 2, eat an anti-inflammatory diet, something like the Mediterranean diet, which is just loaded with antioxidants. And step 3, get your heart rate up with regular aerobic cardiovascular exercise. Just by doing these 3 very normal things, you are naturally conserving your telomere length and slowing down that biological clock. Literally no experimental peptides required. It is the most powerful, proven method we have right now. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a really provocative mystery that scientists are actively debating right this second. Let's say we do perfect a perfectly safe telomerase switch tomorrow. Is mechanically fixing that shoelace cap enough to make us truly young again? Or is telomerase just one tiny little gear in the giant, mostly uncharted clock of our epigenetics? Maybe true age reversal is going to require completely reprogramming the software of our cells, not just patching up the hardware. It is an absolutely thrilling frontier, and we are for sure going to be keeping a close eye on it right here. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today on Insight Spark. Stay curious, and I will catch you in the next explainer.